Today I'll be talking about COVID-19 impact on the maritime industry, in particular maritime security sector. Coronavirus is first and foremost human tragedy. Based on the data received from the World Health Organization, more than 2.5 million people affected by the disease, out of which 165,229 died. More than 500,000 people recovered. Based on the data received from the UAE Ministry of Health and Prevention, as of today, there are 6,782 cases confirmed, out of which 1,826 recovered and 42 died. A third of the world population is under the lockdown. More than 200 countries are affected, and it's still way too early to give any prediction on the total global impact of COVID-19 based on the fact that the death toll is rising every single day. For sure, we can say that it's going to have a devastating effect on the global economy. As a prediction of the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, the global GDP will fall from 2.9 to 2.4% in 2020. In its turn, economic slowdowns generally lead to the lower demand on energy products, and the fallout of COVID-19 is of no exception. Oil prices are dropping due to the agreement failure on production cuts and slower demand on the refined oil products. OPEC reached finally a tentative agreement to temporarily cut large volumes of production. They agreed to cut about 10 million barrels per day or 10% from normal production levels. Even though the market needs more production cuts at such devastating times, still it's a certain relief to the global economy and to the energy market. Concurrently, we can see a devastating impact of COVID-19 on such vulnerable industries as manufacturing, tourism, hospitality, and of course shipping. As global economic growth continues to deteriorate, the outlook for the commercial shipping in 2020 continues to worsen. Container shipping stands to take the brunt of COVID-19 impact, having a high reliance upon economic stability in advanced economies. When major economies are still under the lockdown, restricting consumer spending, the demand of containerized goods diminishes. Already, carriers have declared a record-breaking amount of sailings, and the idle container capacity is at its highest levels ever. Dry bulk shipping, from the other side, very much reliant upon China, is still on perilous course. And even though the Chinese economy seems to be recovering as of now and could lift freight rates back to profitability, yet as the rest of the world is still struggling to contain the coronavirus outbreak, this scenario looks still very much uncertain. Currently, the freight rates are not even covering the break-even costs. Meanwhile, a very different set of variables is applicable to the oil tanker market, where geopolitics is one of the most dominating. Given the magnitude of the jump in rates in the first quarter, the market specialist mentioned that the uptrend is unsustainable and probably is going to change in the current quarter, with the precise timing hinging on how the global pandemic pans out. Currently, dozens of VLCCs and oil tankers are deployed as storage floating facilities for crude oil, jet fuel, gas oil, gasoline, and other oil products. The current strength in tanker markets is based on imbalances in the oil market, and that won't last long. As of now, we can see that most of the segments of the maritime industry got a big impact from the COVID-19 outbreak, and maritime security is of no exception. The situation with coronavirus continues to evolve. The governments are closing the borders, restricting the movements. That all has its complexities, as logistic issues, as movement restrictions, as the demand-supply chain disruption. There is a very high chance that piracy is gonna rise again as per the COVID-19 outbreak, as most of the governments are overwhelmed by the spate of issues that might bring to the scarcity of resources, and in its turn it might lead to the further unemployment and economic activity disruption. There are lots of vulnerable regions that were pirates infected that are lacking mitigation strategies and might experience looting, theft, and further disruptions that will lead to higher piracy attacks. With the priority given to the healthcare system, there are going to be a raise in the number of the illicit maritime trade. After all the restrictions were put in place and duly implemented by the governments, all the flights being halted by Sri Lanka, Oman, UAE and other vital regions for the maritime security, most of the private maritime security companies, they suspected their operations, while probably most of their guards were onshore. When our guards were based offshore and they were mobilized more than 4 months ago on long-term basis contract with AlSafina Security. They all are abided by the standard infection protection and control precautions and measures put in place by the platform management that is strictly abided to these health measurements. So all the guards on board of the platforms are in good health. There were no symptoms of COVID-19. They all are going from the pre-boarding screening before embarking the client's ship. Also, all the client ships are duly advised to have a written outbreak management plan, and all the security operators have to acknowledge the management plan. Moreover, all our guards are based on board of the floating armories all over the perimeter of the high-risk area on 25th North, 13 North and 17 North. Thus, we are committed to ensure shipping continues to trade efficiently, safely and securely during the COVID-19 pandemic. In these unprecedented times, the ability of shipping services to continue undisrupted to transport food, energy and medical supplies across the continents will play a critical role in overcoming this pandemic. Health measures must be a first priority for governments, business and society. It's important for business to show solidarity and work together to protect staff, local communities and customers, as well as keeping supply chains, manufacturing and logistics working. On the other hand, governments should foresee the effects in case maritime transport comes to a halt due to travel restrictions and the inability of shipping companies to relieve their crews, or extensive port entry procedures which renders cargo worthless. On a bigger scale, the problem, as earlier mentioned, that will affect the safe passage of vessels should be addressed in order to guarantee a swift recovery after lockdowns are lifted and economies gather momentum.